Hello, everybody. We got a great show for you. Thank you so much for joining us here today. We got a good one for you, as always. A good one, a great one. Either way, we're going to get into it all throughout the show today. And kind of a whip around, a pretty interesting show to start with, though. I'm going to hit a lot of different stories, hit a lot of different areas, but we are starting with Twitter and this very interesting and developing feud between Matt Taibbi and Elon Musk, as it really does kind of show how the Elon Musk continues to kind of lose control over Twitter, as some of his allies in this fight for to make Twitter a home and a bastion of free speech have now abandoned him, or has he abandoned them? We will discuss. Also, conservative pundits have come out in a big way to defend Clarence Thomas and his mega donor. Perhaps they may be on the payroll. We'll take a closer look. Andrew Press has that story in Jacobin. Also, Dave Weigel and his new home Semaphore, the wonderful campaign reporter, with a look at how abortion will be affecting the 2024 race for Republicans, and they still have no idea what to do except for, when they see a pro-choice policy, kill it as fast as they can. Meanwhile, Dianne Feinstein is getting more and more pressure to do what she should have done many, many years ago and resign due to the fact that she, according to multiple reports, has no longer many functioning mental faculties. Now, Congress people in our state are calling for her resignation. And Justin Pearson, speaking of resignations or expulsions, Justin Pearson has been reinstated to the Tennessee legislature. Now both expelled members are back in the state house. All right, we start at the top. A lot of stuff to cover here today. We go right through it. And we start with this in The Verge. Elon Musk and one of his Twitter files writers, Matt Taibbi, don't seem to be on the greatest terms right now. The situation probably isn't going to get any better after Matt Taibbi posted a deleted DM conversation between the two of them. So it is a little bit of a mess, and it really obviously starts with the Twitter files. Taibbi was given access to Twitter information from Musk. And of course, this is a, there was some interesting stuff in this about, the roles Twitter has had over various times. But really what this is when it comes down to it, is Twitter giving obviously, he had a very contentious interview where I think, they both made some pretty valid points, but all in all, Matt Taibbi got very, very embarrassed over the weekend, with his conversation with Mehdi Hasan on MSNBC, where Mehdi Hasan, who I personally, I think they both have kind of sold out from where they used to be in kind of opposite directions, Mehdi Hasan and Matt Taibbi. But I'm saying this is someone who has had and really was enjoyed having, and it just thought that was quite an honor, in fact, to have Matt Taibbi on the show. But I think it's pretty clear now that he was kind of off his rocker with this one. Especially now the fact that he's kind of been completely burned by Musk as well. So, of course, Musk gives Taibbi the access to the Twitter files, first person to look at it and tweet it out. He also publishes a Racket News, a Substack-based publication with 362,000 subscribers. And on Wednesday, Substack announced a Twitter-like product called Substack Notes, where Substack creators, I guess, can post short Twitter-like tweets, I guess, notes, and they are, pretty pissed about that over Twitter. Late in the week, Twitter started restricting tweets with Substack URLs, severely limiting how many Substack writers can promote their work on Twitter, which, by the way, is a big portion of, I guess, at least, I know Twitter is a very broad place, but a big portion of Twitter, I feel like it's fair to say, is just journalists and writers promoting their, and trying to generate discourse about their work on Substack here. And of course, you can start to see the problem. Taibbi, with deep roots to Substack, is kind of getting put in the middle of a battle between these two platforms, as Musk, in what is probably a pretty flagrant violation of these anti-competition laws, kind of steps in and says, no way, we will not allow Substack to put their work on Twitter, Substackers to put their work on Twitter, and Taibbi is just not happy about that. Friday afternoon, Taibbi said he was told Twitter restrictions were due to a dispute over the new Substack Notes platform, and did not specify who gave him that information. He also said he planned to move to Notes, and there's a little bit of a reaction to that, of people being, oh wow, this is someone who's played a big role in Elon Musk's Twitter, is now going to be off that platform due to the restrictions on his Substack. How is Elon Musk going to respond? So on Saturday, Musk claimed that Taibbi was an employee of Substack, which is not true. Of course, if he was that, you still did the relationship with him. Nothing really has changed. But Musk also claimed that Substack was trying to download a massive portion of the Twitter database to bootstrap their Twitter clone, which Substack CEO also says is not true. On Sunday, Substack said the suppression of Substack publications on Twitter appeared to be over, but on Monday evening, an entirely separate thread with another Twitter Files writer, Michael Schellenberger, Musk stated shared his DMs with Taibbi as evidence of information they need to be corrected in an article by another author. The DMs appear to show Taibbi explaining his relationship with Substack. Those DMs are now deleted, but of course, being the internet, we can still save them. And it does seem to be clear that, as a lot of people expected, Taibbi was pretty much in relatively constant communication with Musk about some of the stuff about, the Twitter Files, the inner workings of Twitter, what the problems were, and he has not been shy in kind of raising this issue. And then Taibbi seems kind of annoyed. He goes, "You're taking down all of my Twitter Files threads because you're mad at me personally for not leaving the company where I was already employed? Really?" And of course, he kind of makes a slip of the tongue and says, "I was employed at Substack." Well, of course, he's not employed. He's not on the Substack payroll. He doesn't work on the Substack website. He has a website. He hosts a website on Substack where independent people who like his content pay to read it. And they just pay him, which I assume probably kind of that goes to Substack. But he is not on the Substack payroll. But he kind of make, I guess, a slip of the tongue, a slightly unclear statement. He goes, Elon Musk goes, "No, this should not be happening. We'll fix tomorrow." And then he responds to the tweet and goes, "You're employed at Substack? My subscribers there employ me," he says, "and I have a great thing going there. I also have loyalty to the company, which did originally hire me. And if I moved to Twitter, I would have a major optics issue for both of us. But isn't this related to the threads being removed? So this is going to be fixed, yes, later, just 20 minutes or so later." And he said, Musk says yes. And then Taibbi says, "I was never a Substack employee. I was one of the first Substack Pro contributors, which is a guaranteed return system for the first year." Musk, in what appears to be a signal chat, asked Taibbi, "You are again employed at Substack." So you can see where the DMs were removed by scrolling up this thread from the tweet from Musk, where Musk claims that Substack was illegally downloading again the vast amounts of data. But it does seem that a lot of these kind of very interesting kind of falling apart of the Twitter Files coalition, and it's going to be interesting to see what direction Musk takes in terms of the PR side of his Twitter takeover, which I think was definitely kind of boosted in large part through these Twitter Files. All right, let's go down to our next story, and this is Andrew Perez in Jacobin. After ProPublica reported that Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas had failed to disclose 2 decades worth of luxury tips provided by billionaire conservative megadonor Harlan Crow, right-wing pundits and think tankers raced to defend Thomas and his benefactor without mentioning the one thing they had all in common: their own financial ties to Harlan Crow. The episode is a reminder of how many conservative pundits and scholars owe their sinecures to the same billionaires who fund the Republican election campaigns and efforts to influence the judiciary. Hours after ProPublica dropped his report, Ilya Shapiro, a senior fellow of the right-wing think tank, the Manhattan Institute, unless Harlan Crow has some business before the court, the @ProPublica report Justice Thomas is a big, breathless nothing burger. Unmentioned, the Manhattan Institute, where Shapiro leads an amicus brief filing program lobbying the Supreme Court to rule on certain ways in issues like student debt cancellation, corporate taxation, boasts Crow's wife, Kathy, on the board of trustees, and has been called wonderful by Crow himself. So, of course, I'm sure they have no financial relationship here. And, of course, this is what you got to understand. These people are totally bought off. They're totally corrupt, and they're totally part of this system of just that is really devoted to help making sure that conservatives can find these very, very comfortable places, these very, very easy places in these environments where, when they have the Manhattan Institute, where they just sit around typing all day about, how to make the worst kind of right-wing reactionary policy. And they are really making it very, very clear that they're not going to be going down quite without a fight here, and really kind of protecting protect. I guess it's fair to say protecting a sense where their bread is buttered. Many of these pundits came forward to vouch for Crow's honor and moral character after the ProPublica story prompted renewed scrutiny of Crow over his collection of Nazi memorabilia, which included 2 paintings by Adolf Hitler and a signed copy of Mein Kampf. In 2016, Supreme Court justices, including Thomas, unanimously voted to condone the practice of giving lavish gifts to public officials in exchange for access. Crow, an heir to a Dallas real estate empire, is the CEO of Crow Holdings, a sprawling real estate investment and private equity firm that manages retirement savings for public employees. A relatively private man, he's a long time been a major donor to Republican political campaigns and outside groups. But this guy, he's like apparently his biggest role, his biggest thing, is apparently just inviting everyone and anyone from the conservative movement over to his house for dinners and garden parties, all relating to various things, right next to the statues of Hitler and Mao and Pol Pot, and all those things like that. That's apparently his pride, his joy, his passion here, and while also apparently enjoying a little bit of cocaine as well. But Crow, he's an heir to the Dallas real estate empire, CEO of Crow Holdings, and that really is just spreading his wealth around to kind of just prop up the intellectual conservative movement. So he's also been a pretty big donor to tax-exempt dark money groups and charitable organizations that do not have to report their donors. In 2011, Crow told the New York Times, "I disclose what I'm required to disclose by law, and I don't disclose what I'm not required to disclose." While those donations are not, for the most part, traceable, it's clear that Crow has been very generous to conservative think tanks, legal groups, and media outlets. ProPublica reported last week that for years Crow had offered Thomas free trips on his private jet and super yacht. Those tips should have been disclosed under federal ethics rules, according to 7 experts consulted by the nonprofit news outlet. Shapiro, who joined the Manhattan Institute last summer, took time away from a trip to Legoland last week to record an audio clip defending Crow's gifts to Thomas, in addition to tweeting his support for the justice. Pretty much a very, very clear way of saying, okay, this is how we know, like very, very clearly that, okay, I'm on the payroll. It's the guy who has Nazi pictures, Nazi memorabilia in his house, who just got caught being corrupt essentially with the Supreme Court justice, and people like Ilya Shapiro, the Manhattan Institute, are the only ones who are going to come out and defend him. Why? Because they're on the payroll. There's a lot of people like that. You got Charles Murray, you got a fair few other people. I think David French was one of them, who was just not necessarily the base of the conservative movement was funded by him, but kind of the more intellectual side of it. The institutes and things like that. That is where people like this guy, Ilya Shapiro, are going to be coming from.
So I'm interrupting my day at Legoland to just say that, Joel's not a lawyer, so he might not know that the technical legal term for this ProPublica report about Justice Thomas is a big, breathless nothing burger. It is not against the rules to receive all sorts of gifts, even lavish gifts, even yachts and rides on private jets and stays at luxury resorts, etc. Nor do the Supreme Court ethics rules even require reporting such gifts if they're personal hospitality, gifts from friends, things like that. Now, maybe the rules should be changed, and Congress is debating that, whether Congress can force the Supreme Court to do anything. The Supreme Court can take up its own rules and all. That's a separate discussion. Maybe for the interest of transparency, that would be good. But regardless, there's not even an appearance of impropriety unless Harlan Crow has some business before the court, which no one has alleged, not even in ProPublica's big, breathless nothing burger.
All right, so that is Ilya Shapiro talking about that. And the funniest part about this is that he actually does regularly file amicus briefs attempting to persuade justices in certain ways to rule on cases. And again, I wonder who helps kind of fund that effort, kind of a circular loop, I'm guessing. It all comes back to one man or maybe multiple people. Shapiro recently, in fact, submitted a brief calling on the Supreme Court to issue a decision blocking Joe Biden's student loan cancellation plan last month. Shapiro filed a brief calling on the Supreme Court to review a case upholding the constitutionality of a one-time repatriation tax imposed on foreign earnings accumulated by foreign subsidiaries of U.S. companies, which was passed as part of former President Donald Trump's 2017 tax law. As controversy mounted over Crow's undisclosed gifts to Thomas, public attention extended to Texas businessmen's extensive collection of Nazi artifact, which included oil paintings by Hitler, a signed copy of Mein Kampf, and a teapot engraved with Hitler's initials, as well as linen napkins embroidered with swastikas. These items have come to scrutiny. In 2015, Democrats called on Senator Marco Rubio to cancel a presidential campaign fundraiser scheduled at Crow's house on the eve of Yom Kippur. And in 2019, scholars who dined at Crow's mansion were disturbed by his Nazi artifacts. Crow offered a half-hearted apology to their host organization, according to a letter obtained by Mother Jones. I'm sorry that anyone would be offended. I would very much hope that it would be completely obvious that having anything related to Nazis or slavery could not possibly be interpreted as support or glorification for those evils. Over the weekend, several conservative pundits came forward to defend Crow and his collector's items, without mentioning, of course, they benefited from his family's financial support from their think tanks and media outlets. So Jonah Goldberg is another one here. Co-founder and editor-in-chief of the conservative news site The Dispatch, which you better believe no one's reading that, so it's completely funded by someone like Harlan Crow. He characterized Crow's separate garden of dictator statues, including Russia's Joseph Stalin and Vladimir Lenin, as an attempt to commemorate the horrors of the 20th century in the spirit of never again. Goldberg later tweeted, "My conscience is clear. Harlan Crow is a good man and the farthest thing from a Nazi." As the Dispatch separately noted in a news article covering Crow's gifts to Thomas, Harlan Crow is a minority investor in the Dispatch and a friend of the founders. How about that? Of course, Goldberg is also a senior fellow at the AEI, a right-wing think tank where Crow serves on the board of trustees. Previously, Goldberg was a senior fellow at the National Review Institute, the nonprofit affiliated with the conservative National Review magazine. The National Review Institute has also regularly hosted its debate series on Crow's old Parkland campus. Crow was additionally co-chair of the 2021 National Review Institute, honoring Leonard Leo and Eugene Meyer, the Federalist Society Network of conservative lawyers. Leo, also a friend of Thomas, was a key architect of the conservatives' current 6-3 majority on the Supreme Court. And David French, a former, someone National Review Institute guy, former senior editor of the Dispatch as well, defended Crow as well. So you see this, I think it's really not only, is it kind of remarkable the fact that we kind of did have, I think, a bit of an understanding about how influential the conservative influence and judicial network was. We did know it kind of really spanned the Federalist Society, really influencing on some of the lower levels with these media people, and so many of these, kind of institutes, these kind of make-work media companies really were kind of influenced and propped up by big money, whether it be the Kochs, whether it be Harlan Crow, whether it be the Mercers, another big family. But now I think the biggest, most remarkable part of this public reporting is the clear fact that obviously that judicial network, that right-wing influence network, has spread up to at least one of the justices on the Supreme Court. And with that is something that I think is really quite remarkable, and something that, any real oppositional party would be able to do something pretty serious with. With that being said, we get to, in 30 seconds, our next story, which is a great report from the campaign trail from David Weigel.
MC, make another hit.
This ain't what you want. Project. This ain't what you want. This ain't what you want.
You're listening to Newsflash right here on the Spencer Walsh Radio Network. Help us grow our audience. Subscribe, rate, and review our show on whatever podcast platform you're listening on. Thank you very much. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're getting back into it today. We got Dave Weigel here on the campaign trail, taking us up through for abortion in 2024, and it's still a big issue. And some are kind of really, really not, really trying to not mention it for the most part. And some people are making quite a big deal out of it. So Donald Trump is one of those people who is not really mentioning it. Nikki Haley stumped in Northwest Iowa, but never mentioned it. Vivek Ramaswamy, another lesser-known presidential candidate, he did interview after interview, but it never came up. And it still, though, is a pretty big issue, and it's all because of the Republican Party, so it's not going away. 5 days after U.S. Judge Matthew Kacsmaryk ordered the FDA to withdraw its approval of mifepristone, a commonly used abortion medication. Just one potential presidential nominee has said a word about it. Life won again, former Vice President Mike Pence said, thanking the judge for fixing a 20-year wrong. Most other Republicans have been quiet, though, and the anti-abortion movement noticed. Everyone was at church on Friday when the decision came out, said Katie Daniel, the state policy director of Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America. That could be part of it. I guess it was a good Friday at the time. So just like really just show you that like even pretty much everyone except for the psychotic embodiment of the kind of Christian evangelical aide Mike Pence is the only person who is feeling comfortable enough to say anything about it right now at this point, which I think is really, really telling for a lot of people. That, even though this is kind of the interesting dichotomy that I've been a little bit struggling with, honestly, over the past, 3, 4, 5, 6 months or so, is the fact that really ever since the November election, it's clear that this abortion, the social dynamics, the social politics in this country really has flipped almost in dynamics, which is been quite remarkable to see, because it's becoming quite clear now that the number one thing that Republicans, that's really animating Republicans, obviously the social issues. They're the ones pushing the boundaries on it. They're the ones overreaching. They're the ones that seem weird, whereas it used to be liberals getting all woke, talking about crazy notions that are now kind of commonplace, accepted parlance, such as like white privilege and stuff back in 2014. Those were the weird ones. Now it's the Republicans on social issues that are seeming completely weird, completely just loony and out of touch, and the fact is they still have not clearly have not come to terms in any significant stretch with the fact that this is going to really severely hurt them electorally. They're really, they're hanging on this, and I think it's kind of starting to hit now. Like poll after poll is saying like how unpopular Republicans are on abortion. They've really, especially the Wisconsin thing, that was another big wake up call on the the abortion rights issue, just about how motivated Democrats are to really make a big difference on this issue. But they still, the thing I'm kind of struggling with is, even though it's proving to be more and more electorally unpopular, the fact is, these people are still winning. They're holding seats. They're passing laws, like in places like Florida, places like Tennessee, and really they're going to be, since there's no Democrat with a shot there, it's in predominantly Republican places, they're just going to be completely unrestrained. And of course, there's going to be some people who will lose political power in the long term that are doing this stuff, but for the most part of it, like these people, some of them still do have free reign to do whatever they want to do, even though things are, on these kind of crazy, like this war on woke, as some would call it, even though it's getting so increasingly completely unpopular. It still is a threat to a good portion of, like trans people in North Dakota, for example. Like that is a very, they're out there. They exist. And I know there's not a lot of people in North Dakota, but, the example still stands of the fact that this needs to be worried about, even though it still isn't a very popular thing. But it still is remarkable, and I think it's very important to track out and really kind of make people aware of. So, there's a very fine line between, fear-mongering and preparing appropriately, because this stuff is really hurting Republicans. This kind of trans, and especially this abortion stuff, is really hurting Republicans as well. You never have seen this 2 years ago. The total fear of the issue, said John Schwepp, the policy director of the Social Conservative American Principles Project. My worry, to be honest, is that this gets decided in the presidential primary in a way that hurts the pro-life movement. Republicans are trapped in a machine. They switched on but can't switch off. Abortion remains a front-of-mind issue for voters with no clarity on what the leading Republican candidates for president would do about it if elected. The problem for those candidates is that the issue is moving on 3 separate tracks. In the federal courts, thanks to Trump-era appointments, conservative judges and majorities who will approve maximalist restrictions like Kaczmarzyk with lifetime appointments and no voter accountability. In states, every election can now determine what kind of abortions are legal, as in Wisconsin, where Justice-elect Janet Protasewicz said she'd overturn the state's 1849 ban, and Republicans did their response, never passing an updated law, with exceptions after suggesting they could. In federal politics, that dithering has intensified. Republican presidential candidates are mostly avoiding the topic for now, but will face pressure to win over anti-abortion evangelical voters in Iowa and South Carolina with tougher stances and more specifics, which, by the way, will be poison to any major Republican nominee who's going to make it through the general. So, which could, by the way, prove a little bit of an underrated challenge to Trump. If he kind of hedges on this abortion stuff, which we know is his instinct too, will the evangelical voters that he struggled with in 2016, will they start to say, oh, I don't know about this, he's not as committed on abortion and it's becoming a pretty big issue? Or is that, Trump being Trump, is he just going to be able to use his kind of swag and charisma to wriggle his way out of it? I think, that is certainly possible. Top Republicans like Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, known for his political antenna, have strongly distanced themselves from the Lindsey Graham legislation, which is very unpopular. There's a 15-week abortion ban with exceptions for rape, incest, and the health and life of a mother in certain circumstances. 15-week ban polls well on paper at least, but the Graham proposal, as he explained to activists at a conservative conference near Charleston last month, is a ceiling, not a floor. It would further restrict abortion in blue states, but not prevent red states from going beyond the 15 limit to restrict abortion even earlier in a pregnancy. So that's a kind of critical moment, and something that certainly Republicans will phrase as a national abortion ban. Democrats. Those states aren't exactly making it an easy topic to avoid. Two of the gubernatorial races in Louisiana and Mississippi are unfolding in places where abortion is effectively banned. In Louisiana's race with a rare anti-abortion Democrats signature, though Governor John Bel Edwards has said he has asked to add new exceptions this session. In Louisiana, GOP gubernatorial frontrunner Jeff Landry is feuded with the city of New Orleans for not enforcing the ban. And in Kentucky, the Trump-endorsed favorite for the GOP gubernatorial nomination is Attorney General Daniel Cameron, who opposes exceptions to the state abortion ban, a contrast that Democratic Governor Andrew Beshear has been happy to draw. There's one candidate in this debate that has gotten abortion facilities closed since last August, said Cameron in a debate with the Spectrum News last month. I understand the delicacy of the issue, but I want to make sure that I'm a governor that reflects the values of the men, women, and children are in 120 counties, and I firmly believe that we've got to look out for those that are most vulnerable in our population and those that are in the womb. Democrats are not going to be expecting to win many elections in modern Kentucky, but in 2022 ballot measure to ban abortion in the state constitution after it was defeated by 4 points, the same day that people like Senator Rand Paul won election in a landslide, that campaign and others like it revealed how voters who otherwise support the GOP could balk on the issue. As we've seen very clearly, abortion seems to be transcending politics, and for the GOP, that could be a sign for worry. All right. Another possible sign for worry for the Democrats is centered around Dianne Feinstein. And we'll get to what's the problem with her in just a second.
My name is Spencer Walsh. This is the Spencer Walsh Radio Network, and if you're listening to one of our podcasts, whether it's Newsflash, Hidden History, The Spencer Walsh Show, or something else, ladies and gentlemen, we have one simple request of you. Please be sure to rate us, subscribe to us if you like us, and leave us a comment, because just like all of you, sometimes we need that feedback in our lives, good or bad. We want to hear what you have to say, so please do those steps, make SWR content better, and thank you so much for listening.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you back to Newsflash today, and a very interesting situation developing with the senior senator from California, Dianne Feinstein. She's facing fresh calls to resign in the wake of news reports detailing about how her extended absence from the Senate is being diagnosed with shingles earlier this year is impacting her party's ability to confirm President Joe Biden's judicial nominees. With Feinstein out, the Senate Judiciary Committee is deadlocked at 10-10, leaving the panel unable to advance judges that don't garner support from Republican senators. Dick Durbin, the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee, has come under fire in recent days for letting Republicans obstruct the nomination process via the informal blue slip process, which effectively gives senators veto power over appointments to court seats in their home states. So again, really, I think the crazy situation here is why and how has Senator Dianne Feinstein not resigned yet? She's, for years there's been reports about her just really losing her mental faculties. She's a very old lady. She's been in politics for an incredibly long time, and she's already not going to be seeking re-election. I think the thing now is, the push now is to really say, why this is getting in the way actually of policy. I think, Durbin with this blue slip process is another kind of big problem, but it's just also another one of those things that shows you the Democrats just not being a real kind of functional, aggressive political party. You think the Republicans would really let something like this slow them down? when it comes to passing or filling up the court. I think Mitch McConnell would, for 1 second, let some 89-year-old with shingles stand in the way of stocking that court up with people like Matthew Kaczmarek, who are going to overturn abortion and things like that. I think that is something that is really another example. The timeless story of the difference between the Republicans and Democrats, who's willing to fight, who's willing to push hard, and who is willing to just ruthlessly get past these obstacles. If someone's just completely dead weight and really hurting the party, there would be immediate action taken about it. I think that is something that is very, very big. Another thing is Dianne Feinstein, she's just not capable of serving the people in the Senate anymore. It's a very, very big deal. New Republic's Alex Shepard wrote, quote, "This is unacceptable" on Tuesday. It is also like Durbin's continued inexplicable deference to blue slips, easily resolvable. It's time for Feinstein to resign her seat. In fact, it's long past time for her to bring her career to a close. For several years, there's been escalating concern she's no longer up to the task of serving as a U.S. Senator. In December 2020, Politico reported there were widespread fears among Democrats that Feinstein was starting to slip, which is understandable given her age. She is the oldest sitting senator who has served since 1992. Aides and Senate staff are still political. The 87-year-old senator gets confused by reporters' questions or will offer different answers to the same question depending on when or where she's asked, and, quote, appears frail. In February, shortly after her office put out a statement announcing she would not run for re-election in 2024, Feinstein told reporters that she had not decided whether to retire, prompting a staffer to tell her the statement was already released. So that set up the election between Katie Porter, Robert Lee, and Adam Schiff to fill her seat. But this is a problem that whether you get cut down on blue slips, cut down on, which pretty much gives Republicans a free veto on any judge they don't like, because that's just how the Senate works, or cut down, just do something about Dianne Feinstein, kick her off the Judiciary Committee, or just force her to resign, whatever. Just put somebody in there that can be. Can do the job, because that's really all you are at the end of the day in the Senate, a vote to a broader political project. All right, let's go now to our final story of the day. State Rep Justin Pearson has become the second Democrat of two to be reinstated to the Tennessee House of Representatives, just days after the chamber voted to expel him and another black lawmaker for protesting gun violence on the House floor. Shelby County Board of Commissioners voted on Wednesday to nominate the Memphis lawmaker as the interim district representative until the next state election. The explosion of Pearson and Representative Justin Jones sparked outrage from Democrats across the country, with President Joe Biden calling the move undemocratic. Pearson, Jones, and fellow state rep Gloria Johnson were dubbed the Tennessee Three after leading hundreds of protesters on the House floor demanding their Republican colleagues enact gun reform following the deadly Nashville shooting that killed 6 people, including 3 children. And of course, we're really kind of a pretty cool story. I don't think these guys are going to be any kind of like revolutionaries. It does feel, at least at this moment, to be one of those stories, those classic kind of Democrat built for the media stories of 3 people in this case making a bold stand against gun violence, kind of a very popular issue with the Democratic base, but like a very kind of typical Democratic story. It's going to look very good. People will be able to feel very outraged about it, but in terms of broader political purpose, in terms of actively doing something about the issue in terms of for the long term, it's not going to be that effective, given that obviously Tennessee is a very Republican state. And, these guys, they're not going to be starting a revolution on gun reform anytime soon. But it was absolutely, it was undoubtedly absolutely crazy to see them pushed out of the Tennessee House like that. And it's very cool and good, without a doubt, they were able to get back in so quickly and efficiently in the way that they were. All right, that concludes our little whip around for today. Really kind of getting you all across the spectrum of news. Thank you so much for listening, and we will be back on Friday with our final show of the week.